Hello everyone, welcome back to Code to Serve Academy. So today we are going to cover a lecture of user defined method. Okay, so in the previous lecture we have already covered what is a method, how to declare a method. We have already learned about the syntax, how to declare a method, and we have also learned about call by value and call by reference. So in this lecture we are going to cover the remaining topic of this chapter. Okay, so let's get started. So you already have learned about the call by value. So in this, we are going to see how actually the memory allocation happens, or how the value changes when the value is passed from main to a particular function. Okay, so have a look over here. I have created one function called call by value, and it is accepting two parameter, that is int a and int b. Okay, so what actually this is doing, it is trying to swap the value. Okay, so whatever the value comes in a, it is going to swap to b, and whatever the value comes in b, it will swap to a. Okay, so how we can do this? It is a logic that you already know. Like, we create one temporary variable, and then that value of one parameter that we are getting, will initialize this to temp. All right. Then what you will do? Will initialize a, that we have already initialized to temp, with the next value, that is b. So now b we will initialize with the temporary variable. So what is happening? So we have two variable a and b. So here you are getting in a, suppose 5, and suppose you are getting 4. So here you are getting 5, here you are getting 4. Now what is happening? We are initializing this value in the temp, we are initializing with 5, that is value of a. So we are initializing this to a. All right, now we are saying, like, copy the value of b into a, copy the value of b into a, so a will become 4. All right, now we are saying copy the value of temp into b. So temp is 5, we copy it to this b. So we got 5 and in a and 4 in b, but now we have swapped that. Okay, so when this function will be called, actually this line, piece of line will be executed, and the value that a and b was having, it will get interchanged. Okay, so this is a logic to swap two variables. Suppose some question comes in your exam to write a program to swap two variables. This is a logic. If it is told with, you are told without using third variable, you have to do. So this is a logic. You can do a is equals to a plus b, then b is equals to a minus b, a is equals to a minus b. This is the logic part. So we are not much concerned into this. We are more concerned about the memory allocation. So you see, when this function will be called, actually there is two variable created in the memory. One is a and one is b. All right, so here you are getting two values. What I told you, you will be getting 5, suppose, and 4 in b. So initially when you get 5 and 4, after the execution of this, what will be the value of a and b? The a will become 4 and b will become 5. All right, after execution of this will change to 4, and this will change to 5. This is happening for this scope, only for this scope. Now you think of, like, this part, or the function that I showed you above, is being called from the main method. So inside main method also we have two variable, int a and int b. So here there is a separate copy in the memory. This is a separate copy, and here we have a separate copy of a and separate copy of b. So here you see, like, int a equals to 5 and b is equals to 4. So what happens? Now next we are calling this function. So in the first parameter, you see we are calling 5. That means we are passing 5 and 4 in the second parameter. Now the control will go up. All right. Now the control will go up and will come to this function. And inside this function, 5 will be the first argument, and 4 will be the second argument. So actually whatever you are passing from here to here is a separate copy. Here you are getting a separate copy. All right, that is what we learned in call by value. So you see, whatever changes you do here after executing all this piece of code, the control that came here after reaching to this curly braces, it will be returning back the control to the next line from where it was called. Okay, so now the control will come over here. Okay, so after this, if you print the value of A and B, if you print the value of A and the value of B, still the value here, the value of A and B got changed, but here the value is still 5, A is still 5 and B is still 4. That means the value that you are passing to the call by as a call by value to other function, the actual changes happens in a separate copy. Okay, so that is what I wanted to show you. Like there is a separate memory allocation for this variable that is inside the main, and there is a separate memory allocation for the variables in the function scope. Okay, hope this is clear. All right, now we'll move next and see memory assignment for call by reference. So you know, in call by reference, a same copy is passed, and whenever the changes happens, it happens in the actual copy. Okay, so if you think of, like, suppose we are passing here as a call by value. So you already know for call by value, any primitive data type we pass, that becomes a call by value. Now if you are passing user defined type, that is an object, so that will be a call by reference. So in call by reference, what happens in actual copy, the changes happens. Okay, now there is one exception. There is one exception you have to remember. That exception is for string object. I'll write here for string object, there is a exception. What is the exception? Like if you pass it, to any function, you see over here, string itself, you can think of an object like string s1. So here string object, if you pass it, it will not, the actual value what you think should change, but it will not change in case of a string. That is what I am going to show you over here. Okay, let me first show you for a string, then I will show you another method similar to string. Okay, so suppose you are calling this function, this that is called by reference for a string s1. There is a string s is equals to hello. All right, now you are calling this function, call by ref, and here you are passing s. Okay, you are passing s to this function. So when it receives s as a argument here, what it is doing, it is changing this s1. So you think of what happens in the memory. So in the memory, for now, there is one variable s, that points to hello. Okay, that points to hello. Now, what happens when you call this? Now, suppose here you called it like string s1. So s1 will also be created in the memory, and as you are passing the value hello here, a separate memory, it will not be created. Rather, it will point to the same hello. Okay, what I mean, in the memory, wherever hello was present, even though you are passing this s over here in the call by ref method, so what happens, till now s only exists in the initial case when you declared this line. After this, what happens, you called this function. So as soon as you call this function, another there exists another variable, that is s1. Now what you are doing, you are passing the same value. Once you are passing the same value, it will point to the same memory location where this hello was present. All right. Now you are saying S1 is equals to S1 plus world. Now you are saying I'm changing this S1. S is still unchanged. If I say you see S is pointing to this hello, S1 is also pointing to hello. This was the concept of call by reference. Now you think of what call by reference means. Like if you change the value from that function, it should change the actual value itself. But there is a cache. Like there is an exception for a string object. String object is immutable. Okay, string object is immutable. This you have to remember. Since string object is immutable, once you declare it, you cannot change it. So that is the condition that that is the case with a string object. Now what you are telling, like S1 should be S1 plus world. That means you are telling the new value of S1 will be hello world. All right. Now what happens inside the memory? What happens now? Actually S1 till here it was pointing to this uh, memory location. Now you told like S1 is equals to S1 plus world. So S1 was hello. Now you are telling to append world at the end. Okay. So now instead of pointing to this, it will point to new memory location. Okay, that means for string as it is immutable, you cannot change the actual value. You cannot change the actual value. Instead, a new value will be assigned in a new memory location. That means you have to keep in mind, like whenever you change the value in case of a string, there will be a new memory allocation, and this S1 will now point to this, and now this S points to this hello. It is bit confusing, but you have to keep in mind, since string object are immutable, so once you assign it, and later if you change that, you cannot do, because string is immutable, and whenever you reassign that string to something else, it will create a new reference in the memory. So see, after changing the value, it is creating a new reference. Now it is pointing to this instead of this. There is not two separate copy. If you see over here, there was two separate copy created. Like here, if you see, when you pass the value of S, this hello is created, and even though it comes over here, it still points to this. But in case of call by value, what was happening? This was a separate copy, and again there was a separate allocation of A and B in the memory separately. But in case of call by reference, there is only one copy. But with string, since it is immutable, even though there was a one copy, when you try to do some changes on it, it will point to a new memory location. That you have to keep in mind. Now your question will come, like if a string is immutable and if I want to change the actual content not to point in some new memory location, how we can achieve that? That can be achieved using string buffer. You can achieve that using string buffer. String buffer is similar to string, but there are some more functionality added to string buffer. You will learn about more about string buffer in the string chapter. Okay, so for now, just have a look what is happening here in case of a string buffer. Now I say there is string buffer SB is equals to new string buffer, and I pass hello to it. Okay. Now you see, one variable is created in the memory with SB. Now I'm calling this and creating hello. I'm passing hello. So what will happen in the memory? one variable will be created that will point to this hello. Okay, and the name of the variable is SB. Okay, now you see, once we are passing this, suppose we are passing this SB call by ref buff, and we are passing this SB. So what happens? So if you are passing this SB to this function, as I told you, like it will point now. S2 also exists in the memory. As soon as you call this, this will get here. Now S2 is created in the memory. Now S2 will also point to this. S2 will also point to this memory location. Okay, since you are passing this, these are called by reference, so it will point to the same memory location where this hello was present. This S2 will also point to this. Now what you are doing, you are telling S2 is equals to S2 dot append. Now think of, like I told you, in case of a string, since it was immutable, once this memory allocation you have allocated something, after that you cannot change in case of a string. But in case of a string buffer, now you see S2 is equals to S2 dot append. That means you are telling S2, you are telling S2 to change the actual content to hello world. That means append world at the end. So what will happen? It will become hello world. All right. So now if you log here system.out.print ln, and if you print the s value of SB will be then this new value. Why? Because this here, whatever changes you have done, that changes has been made in the actual copy. This is because string buffer are mutable. That means once you have declared it, you can change the value after that. Okay, if that value is changing, that it will affect the other references also. That means from where you have called those. All right, so this thing you have to keep in mind, very important. String is immutable. Once you declare, you cannot change it later on. And the second thing is string buffers are mutable. So once you declare it, you can change the actual content in the same memory allocation. In the same memory allocation, you can change it, but it is not possible in case of string. All right, I hope it is clear. Okay, let's move forward. Now, returning from a method. So you know the definition, by the definition you can come to know like whether that function is going to return anything or not. Okay, so here if you take an example, you take one example like void, you take int function, and this function returns this return 0. All right, suppose there is a simple function, and when you call this function, so the execution will go over here, and after execution, whenever it encounters return, that value is returned over here. Now suppose you initialize this in int a is equals to function. So what happens? So this first function call will happen. So this line execution will happen from this side. First function call will happen. This control will go to this function. Then when it encounters return, that means the control is returned back to here. That means the value, whatever value was returned, 0 was returned. So this 0 will be initialized to this. Okay. So whenever it encounters return, it will return that value from where it was called. Okay. So you can see the return statement terminates. So execution and pass the control back to the calling method. I told you from where it was called, it will return the control back to the calling method. Hope you got that. So there is a method can contain several return statements. However, only one of them gets executed. Now take an example. Here I am writing func, and here I am writing return 0, return 1, and so many returns if I write parallelly. So what do you think? What it is going to return? Is it going to return 0 or it is going to return 1? Actually, whenever it encounters the first return, it will return back the control. That means after the first return, whatever piece of code you have written, that will not get executed. All right. This thing you have to keep in mind. So after the first return, whatever thing you have written, that will not get executed. Okay. And the reason is like after the first return, the control return back to the calling function, and these all line will be ignored. All right, let's move forward. So returning from, there is one program you can see over here. Write a program to check whether a given number is a positive or not. So you have been told to write a program to check whether a given number is positive or not. It passes a number to a method and return true if it is positive, else return false. So you can quickly try on your own. Meanwhile, I am solving the problem. Okay. So have a look. So let's create one method. It is telling you to return a Boolean value. So you have to keep in mind, if you have been told to return true or false, what will be the return type? Return type will be Boolean. So you will say Boolean check, and in this you are going to receive one argument. So you will say int n, and here what you are going to do, you are telling like if the number is positive, return true, else return false. So you can say if n greater than 0, then I will return true, else return false. Okay, this is what we were asked to do. You can do it in either way also. Like here you have already learned about the ternary operator. Okay, so what you can do here, you can directly write, this line will be same, and here you can write directly return if n greater than 0, then return true, else false. You can solve the same problem in one line. If the number that you are getting is greater than 0, that means it is a positive number, and if it is not greater than 0, that means it is less than 0, and that becomes a negative number. That means you are returning false. Or you can directly do return if n greater than 0, then you are returning true, else you are returning false. Either of them. If you are trying to use this if else, you can do with this, else you can do it in one line. All right. Now next, so method, you already now know, like all the method, if you see the definition, if you see their void, that means that method is not going to return anything. Apart from void, all the method will return something from that function. That is, after execution, you must that function must return something to the calling function. All right. So basically, you can think there may be three types. There is basically three types of method of function in Java. And what are those? Computational method, procedural method, and manipulative method. Let's see one by one. Okay, so let's come to the computational method. So you already know like math.sqrt. So in math.sqrt, if you do math.sqrt, so if you pass suppose 4, so it will return the value of square root of 4, that is 2. So what happens whenever you call these type of method? So whenever you call this type of method, how to remember like this is a method or not? Whenever you encounter circular braces at the end, that means that is a method. Now you see over here, whenever you call computational method, what it is going to do, it will return something after execution of that uh, function. So here, after execution of this, it will return some value, that is 2. And these type of function you can use in your expression. So suppose you are writing some expression, int a is equals to math dot sqrt of 4 plus 2. If you write this, this becomes one expression. So when you can use that function in the expression, you can use any function in the expression when that function is returning anything like an integer value. So here the integer addition will happen. If that function is not written in anything, that is a void, you cannot use them in expression. That is why the name is computational method. Okay, so you can use them in your expression while writing an expression. All right. Now next, manipulative methods. So you see in the how you have done, like if you take an example, if value 0 is returned, it denotes success. Suppose we were returning true or false based on some condition, like we wrote the logic like if n is greater than 0, then it is true, else it is false. So when you do some computation or manipulation inside that method, and you return some value based on that, that means you are doing that type of method is called a manipulative method. Okay, so generally there might be some program like where if we return 0, that is considered as success. Suppose you return that suppose the definition is int check, and at the end you return 0. If it you place some condition over here, if condition, that means whenever you see like that is success, that any logic that you are given that is success, then you return 0, that means your program was successfully checked, or whatever logic you are checking for, that is true. Okay, so these all thing is up to you, like how you return or what kind of value you return. So generally 0 is treated as success. Okay, next, procedural method. So in case of procedural method, it will perform an action, it will perform some action and have no explicit return. You have to keep in mind, in case of procedural, it will perform some action, but there is no explicit return value. That means it is not going to return anything. So in this case, you can take an example of system.out.println. So what it is doing, it will print something on the screen, but it is not going to return back anything. Okay, so these type of method are called procedural method. All right, so now there are two type of function generally you can categorize as pure and impure. So these two category comes like based on the argument that you are getting, like what changes you do to the argument. Suppose you see over here int check is given and there is int a. So since this is an integer value, and this integer value whatever you are getting, and you are changing that value inside that function, that means whatever argument you got, now you are trying to change that value inside that method. That means it becomes impure method. In case of impure method, you are trying the state of the received object. So in case of an object, you think of like here you are receiving an object like of a student object, student obj, and what you are doing over here, you are saying obj dot name. Suppose this object had name characteristics. Okay, so you are changing this to a b c. So what happened? Suppose initially this object contained name as hello. Now inside this, you are changing the name itself. So that parameter or the argument, whatever you got, you are trying to change the value. That means this type of function, we call it as a impure function. So you have to keep in mind, impure method changes or modifies the state of the received object. That is, whatever this object had, the state, that is the data, it is getting changed. Data member is getting changed. Okay, so in case of a pure method, you think of like int check, and here there is again a string s1, and you are not doing anything. You are not doing anything with s1. That is, you are not updating or changing the value of s1. Simply you are doing system.out.println s1 in this type of function. So this type of function becomes a pure function where the argument that is received, you are not modifying on those argument. All right. So it can be primitive. So if you pass any primitive types over here, so even though you change it, the actual data doesn't change. So these type of function, when you pass a primitive or when you pass an object and you do not change the value inside that function, so that becomes a pure function. So you have to keep these two things in mind. All right. So here is the example given for a pure function. You see in this function, the time, this time is capital T, and time, this is a part of date time. So you don't have to worry about that, but just check over here. You can think it as an object, time, time1. This is an object of time class, and similarly time 2. So here we are not changing this time object. So here just we are checking if time 1 hour is greater than time 2 hour, then return true, else return false. Okay, just we are checking here. But in case of impure function, you see here is one time and here is second. Okay, so what we are doing, we are changing the state of time. So whatever time we receive, time dot second, we are updating that value. So whenever you change the argument state, that means it becomes an impure method. All right. Next, function overloading. This is very important for your exam point of view. So program might come, or the definition of function overloading might be there even in your school exam and in your board exam. So you should be very much clear regarding function overloading. So what is function overloading? So you see over here, first take an example, then you will automatically you can write the definition. You see, like there is two function, and the name of the function of these two functions are same, but they differ in the arguments, in the list of arguments. So here there is two argument, here still two argument, that is a signature. So if you take the signature part, these two signature are different, even though there is two argument, but here the type of the argument is int, and both are int, and here the type is float. So we say the signature are different, but the name of the function is same. So what is function overloading? Function having same name with different signature. So we call it as function overloading. So even what I told you, you can write that definition: function having same name, but with different signature. So that we call it as a function overloading. But they both should be present in the same scope. That means inside the same class, if you think of. Okay, so that is one word is written in the same scope. Okay, so you can either follow this definition or whatever I told you. Okay, So now let's move forward. So what happens? Now you think of what is the need of this function overloading. So generally, if you have already covered about the object-oriented programming, so this function overloading basically gives a concept of polymorphism. So you already know what polymorphism is, like where a single person or a single object is able to behave in a different way based on the situation. All right. So now your concern will come if this two function has the same name. When I call this function, when I call divide, suppose your concern might be like when I call this divide and whatever argument I pass, how that function is, how compiler will know which function to call, either this or this. So basically, how internally it is doing, internally, if you take an example of this picture, suppose that function is getting one integer value. So it will call that method which is having argument, which is receiving an argument with integer type. Now suppose again you instead of integer you pass float, so it will call that function which is accepting float as a argument. All right. So you have to keep in mind. So once you call this and whatever argument you pass, suppose you pass 2, 3. So during the runtime, what will happen? It will map like what is the parameter, what is the parameter, how many parameter, and what are the type of those parameter. So you see there is two parameters. So it will check. So these two function has accepts two parameter. Now what is the difference? Then again it will check what is the type of this. Type is integer, type is integer. That means it will dynamically map to this function. Got it? During the runtime. Now suppose you call divide and you pass two value of float type, suppose 3.5 and 3.7. Now it will check, still it is passing two argument. So it will check both the function is passing two argument. Now it will dynamically map to this one because this function accept float value. All right, hope this is clear. We'll be solving problem based on this function overloading, so then you'll get better picture. Okay, now move forward. So here you see function argument list is also known as the function signature. This you already know. Already we covered in the earlier part function signature, function prototype, along with the return type and all the list of argument, it is called prototype. And for function signature, this basically becomes a function signature, name and the type of argument, basically the type of argument you can think of. So here you see there is two function. So what you will say, I told you function overloading only happens when the signature are different. Name should be same, but the signature should be different. So here you take an example. Here it is int a and float b. Now second is int x and float y. So you see here it is accepting integer float, here also integer float. Now these two are same signature. These two are having the same signature. So you cannot call this as function overloading. You cannot call this as function overloading. Function overloading only happens when there is a difference in the name. There is a same name but difference in the signature. So these two you call it as both the signature are same. Here the signature is not different. Now suppose if I make it char a and float. So first I make it char and second one as it is. Now these two will be having a different signature. Now we can call this as a function overloading. But here it is not a function overloading. What basically it will happen? It will override this, and whenever you call, whenever suppose here I give an example, like give you a better idea, like void square Now there is int a and float b. And suppose you are printing over here, I will write SOP. You will write, you should write in your exam system.out.println. So I'm writing here SOP ln and I'm writing first. Now I'm writing another method with the same name, and here suppose int x and float b, and here I'm passing sopln, I'm printing second. Now these two are declared one after the other in a particular class. You can think of a class, or you can think inside a class, or yeah, suppose this is written inside a same class. Now when you call it, inside the main method, from the main method, suppose you call a square and you pass 2 comma 4. So what will be the output? Now you think, since I told you this is not function overloading, this is not a function overloading, so you see both 2 and 4 here. Second type is double, so let's take it as 4.0. Now you think, once you call this, so basically when compilers see like these two are having the same name but the signature is also same, so in that case it will discard the first, function, even though you call this, every time it is going to call the second one. All right, so you have to keep in mind, once you declare a function with the same name and same return type, same name, same return type, and you are just changing, you are not changing anything, just the logic inside that function you are changing. That means whenever you call these type of function, it will always call the second one. That means it is overriding the logic of the first function. All right, since this is not function overloading. In case of function overloading, here it should be some different data type, or the argument list should be different, then function overloading happens. Okay, next. So here you see, pn prn square. Okay, these are the name same name with same return type. Even it can be a different return type, doesn't matter. Here you see the argument is changing. Here it is an integer, here it is a character, here it is a float, here it is a double. So what you will say, the signatures of these functions are different. Whenever you see same name, you have to verify whether the signatures are different or not. So signatures are different, that means it is a function overloading. All right, next. So these, what I already told you, it is summarized over here. You see, whenever a function name is declared more than once, here you see we were declaring it more than once. All right, whenever it is declared more than once, the compiler will interpret the second or the subsequent declaration as follows. It will take the second declaration. If you are declaring the same name, it will take the subsequent method. How it is resolved, it is listed over here. If the signature of the subsequent function, I mean the signature, that means the type and the number of argument. Whenever I say signature is same, that means type and number of argument and the order of the argument is basically same. Type, number of argument, and the order of the argument are same in both the function, then we say that both function has the same signature. Even though there is difference, the name of the variable is different. Suppose here int x is there, and in another function int y is there. Still, you see the name of the variable is different, but the signature are same. both function has the same signature, that means we cannot call this as a function overloading. Instead, this will be overridden. This function will get overridden with this function. So that is what it means in the first line. You see, if the signature of the subsequent function matches the previous function, the subsequent function signature matches the previous signature, then the second is treated as redeclared of the first one. Okay, then we call it as a redeclared, and this is discarded, and whenever you call it, we this is basically getting called. Now, if the signature of the two argument, now think of the return type like int check, and here is also int check. These two are the function. All right. Now, what it is telling, if the signature of the two function match exactly the same, signature is same here. Let me write it in a clear way. Int check, and here is int x, and int check, and int y. So in the first case, what I told you, this part is redeclared, okay, and this will be considered for the later execution whenever you call it. Now you think of the second declaration is treated as errorness. Now if you change, here is like, but the return type are different. Now suppose signature is same, but you change the return type. Now you make it double. So you see over here, these two are same. For function overloading, the criteria is the name of the function should be same, but there should be difference in the signature. But here the signature is not different. Signature is same. So you cannot call it function overloading. Here what happens? You see, whenever there was same return type, it will not give you error. But having same signature, but difference in the return type, this will throw an error. It will give you an error. This is an error. It will, compiler will give you an error at the compile time. Whenever you will compile the program, that time it will give an error. So you have to keep in mind. Now the next thing what it is telling, if the signature of the two function, I mean the signature of the two function in either the number, like suppose in the first function you are having only one argument, and in the second function you are having suppose two argument. Now think of, here is two argument. So what happens if the two function differs in either the number, here is one argument, here is two argument, or the type of argument. Okay, so now suppose one more check is written with double y. So here you see, here in these two case the number of argument are different, but in these two case the signature is different. Why? Because the type of the argument is different. Here it is in an integer type, here it is of double type. So these signature, this and this, all the three signature are different with the same name. So for function overloading, the condition is name should be different and the signature name should be same and signature should be different. So here it is matching that criteria. That is what we say it as a function overloading. So this is very important. You have to keep in mind like what is the condition for function overloading. All right, now let's move forward. So how we are going to call that? So suppose you call, you pass character, so it is going to call this function. Suppose you called, you passed z as a character, so this will call this second function. Now you pass float, this is the first, second, third, and suppose four different function. So from here you are passing character, so it is calling the second one. If you are passing an integer value, it is calling the first one, so on. During the runtime, it resolves which function or which function to invoke. All right. Now, you have been given one question like to find the output. So you see, identify my part A is equals to new identify my parts. This is one class and you have created one object. All right. Similarly, B is equals to new. So similarly, you have created two object. You have created two object. One object is A and the other object is B. So these object has two characteristics or two state. One state is X, it has X, and another is Y. Now, there is some difference. You have to keep in mind here static is written. So you already know whenever static is written, so that will the memory allocation will be same for every object that is created for this class. So we created two objects. So here only Y will be created and X will be shared. X will not be separate for this and it will not be separate for this. Instead, a single copy of X will be created and it will be shared by both. It will be shared by both. Okay. So initially when you create this object, X is 7. So X is shared by both of them. So if anyone changes this value, it will reflect in the other object also. Why? Because this is a static variable. So with static variable, whenever you change the value in one object, that same the difference will get reflected in the other object also. So there is only one memory allocation for a static variable. But in case of y is a normal variable. So here for this object A, there will be separate memory allocation of y. In case of B, there will be a separate memory allocation for y. Okay. So here the value of y in case of B is 3 and in case of A is also 3 initially when you create these two lines. Okay. Now you are telling A dot y is equals to 5. Now you are telling for the object A, make the value of y to 5. So you have made the value of A to be 5. Now you are saying B dot y is equals to 6. B dot y is equals to 6. So you updated these two value. Now you see A dot x is equals to 1. You are saying object A dot x make it to 1. So as soon as you make the changes in the static variable, since it is shared by all the object that you are creating, so the same value will be shared by everyone. Here, now you see you are telling B dot x. So B dot x is also pointing to the same thing. So here initially with A you changed x, so it became 1. Now with B you are changing to 2, now it will become 2. All right. Now here it is telling you to print the value of A dot y. So what is the value of A dot y? A dot y is 5. So for this the output will be 5. Now B dot y. B dot y is 6. For this output will be 6. Next A dot x. A dot x is 2 because A is also pointing to the same x and y is also pointing to the same x because it is a static variable. Okay. Now here if you see A dot x will be 2 and in case of B dot x will also be 2. So this type of question will come in your exam where you have to keep in mind if this is a static variable, only one copy will be created and will be shared by both the object. Okay. Now next, you have been given design a class to overload a function series as follows. This is a small void. Okay. Now you think you have been told to overload a function with the name series, and in the series it is given like the first one is int x and int n, and you have to display the sum of the series of this type of pattern. This is one function you have to create. Let's look at the next function. Similarly, function 2 is series, and in this you'll receive one argument, and there you have to display the series of this type with p term. Okay, up to p term. All right. Now the third is to display the series with this type. You have to find the sum of the series. So here you are told to display the series as it is. You have to display the sum of this series, and in case of 1, you have to find this. All right. So now let's overload the function class overload. Here we create the first function. Let's create the first function void. You have been given create a function void, that is a return type is void, and the name should be series. All right, and it will accept two argument int x and int n. So whatever is given in your in the question, use that variable name only. Like here it is written int x, so make it int x. Here it is written int n, so make it int n. All right, now this logic you have to implement on your own. Whatever type of here the logic will change for different type of question. So based on the things that is given, you have to reframe your logic here. So you have been told to display the sum of the series. That means you have to find the sum of this series. So let us take one variable int sum. Now you see how you are going to find the sum. You have been given n up till when you have to find. So you see this is x to the power 1, x to the power 2, x to the power 3 up till x to the power n. Now what you can do is here you will say you will apply a loop. So you see it is starting from 1 and it is ending at n. So you can apply a loop to start from 1 and end at n. So you will say for int I is equals to 1, I less than equal to n, because this is also included, I plus plus. All right. Now you will say sum is equals to sum plus math dot pow. Okay. So you know with math dot pow, whatever the number is given like x, so math.pow accepts two argument. One that is a base, and second one is the power. So you can do x comma I. So initially when the value of I is 1, it will be x to the power 1, and then the next time when it comes, it will be x to the power 2, x to the power 3 up till x to the power n. So this is the closing for this, and this is the closing for this function. This is the one function that we have written. Now the next function that you have to write is to print this series. So are you able to find like how we are going to print this series? So you think of like first 1 to the power cube minus 1. So this will result to you have to see this, and you have to figure out some logic how this series is getting generated. So based on that you have to apply the logic. So 1 to the power cube is basically 1 minus 1 is 0. So you are getting the first number. Now the second 1 to the power cube, 2 to the power cube minus 1, this is 8 minus 1, so this corresponds to 7. Now third is if you take an example, uh, 3 to the power cube minus 1, this is 27 minus 1, that is equals to 27, 26. So you are able to generate this series with the logic like if I start from 1 and I go till pth term, that is I'm starting from 1 ending at p, and if I do the cube of that and then subtract that number by 1, and then I can generate this series. Okay, now let's come back over here. So in this second function, you will be receiving only one integer argument. Now you don't have to find the sum. It is basically telling you to display the series. Okay, so here you will say, here you will write void series and in this you will receive intp, and in this case what you are going to do, you are going to start a loop for int I is equals to 1, I less than equal to p, and p I plus plus. Okay, now next, so inside this we already framed the logic. What was the logic? Like if you do the cube of I and then you subtract it, like I cube minus 1. So this is the logic that we frame for this pattern, okay, or this series. So here what you will say, you will print that system dot out dot print, and here what you are going to print, you are going to print the cube minus 1. So you will say math dot pow, all right, and here I comma I comma 3, that is I to the power 3 minus 1. You are first it will compute I to the power 3, then it will subtract, and then you are going to print that. Okay, all right. So if you are getting confused, we can make it first store it that value. Suppose int v, and we can say v is equals to math dot pow. We can say I comma 3. All right. So the first value is I comma 3, that you got it. Now after cube, you have to subtract that by 1. So 1 to the power cube is 1, and minus 1, that will become 0. So you are getting the first number of that series. Now generally print this system dot out dot print, and here you can print this v, and let's give 1 comma. So if you will follow your book, basically in your book they have found they have calculated the sum. Okay, so you don't need to calculate the sum because the question was to display the series. If here it was told to find the sum of the series, then you have to calculate the sum like the one we did in the previous function. Okay, so keep in mind. So this is done. Now you will close this. Next, the third one, it says like you have to display the sum. Here it is telling you to display the sum. So in the last problem, we didn't printed the sum. Okay, so here after this for loop ends, okay, you have to just print it, the value of sum. We missed this part. System dot out dot print ln and the sum. Okay, in the previous function that we wrote, we just missed to print that sum. Here we were asked to print the series, so we printed that. And in the third function, if you see, in the third function, you have been told to find the sum of this series, and no argument you are getting. So what it will be? It is like 1 by 2, 1 by 3, 1 by 4. So basically we can start I from 2, and we can end I when it reaches 10. So we know now condition when to start for I equals to 2 up till I equals to 10. All right. Now come back over here. We will write another method like void series, and in this we are not going to receive any argument. So in this what we are going to do, we are going to find the sum of the series. So we will say int. So since if you divide this, this will become double type or the floating type. So whenever you see this divide one, so take double or float. Okay. Now next, so you have to apply a loop for int I is equals to 2, since it was starting from 2 and it was ending at 10. Whenever you see a pattern, then you have to apply a loop, and then basically based on the changing value of I, you have to apply the logic. So here you see I equals to 2, I less than equal to 10, I plus plus. So what you will do over here, you will say sum is equals to sum plus 1 divided by, what is that? 1 divided by I. 1 divided by I. So it will get divided and it will get appended over here. So generally when you do some divisions and you need the decimal part also to be included, generally put in the if in the numerator you are using a constant, so apply 1.0 or 2.0, or in the denominator when you are applying some constant, apply like that. So it will be basically a double type division. Okay. Now once you close this, once the loop is over, you will have the sum inside the sum variable. Now you can print it. System dot out dot print ln, and you can print sum. All right. Now this is a closing of the class. So this was a logic how we wrote the function overloading. Basically, we wrote the three function whatever was given, and then we wrote the logic inside that function. Now next, this is done here. So you have been told to design class to overload a function with this, like you see here. This is again a small double, this is small d. Double volume, you have to create one function with double volume and it will accept one uh, argument as double r. So the radius is in double, here height and double, two argument. And similarly you have been told to basically in the third one, in the third volume, you have been told to you are getting three argument. All right. So basically check over here, you have to return double value. That means whatever value you compute, this value, whatever value you compute, you have to return back. Okay. Now let's uh, quickly design the class. Okay. So we can say class volume, and inside this make sure to use the same name uh, as it is given, like double volume and double r. Okay. So you will say double, let's rename this because the function name is written volume. Okay. So let's change the name of this class, basically make it as vol. Okay. So it is told like you get volume double r, volume double r. And inside this, whenever you call this function, what should happen? You have to find the volume based on this formula. So volume is equals to 4 by 3 into 22 by 7 into r cube. Okay. So basically 4 by 3 into pi and r cube. So you are basically asked to do 4 by 3 22 by 7 into r cube, 4 by 3 pi r cube. So how you can do that? Here you will create double type, double like one variable answer. Now what you are going to do is answer is equals to 4 by 3 into, you can do 22 by 7 like this, or you can do math dot pi. Pi should be capital. You have to keep in mind, whenever you do math dot pi, this pi should be capital. This will get the value of pi from the mathematic library. Okay, and you have to multiply this with r cube. So you can do math dot pow and r comma 3. So I already mentioned, like whenever you do this type of division and the answer you need it in double type, then you generally make the numerator or the denominator as double type. Okay, so here 4 divided by 3.0 or 4.0 divided by 3 into mat dot pi into mat dot pow r comma 3. So this was what we were asked in the first function, like volume is equals to 4 by 3 pi r cube. All right, now we have designed this. Now the here you see the return type is double. That means after computation you have to return this value. So you will say return answer. All right, so the first part is done. Now the check for the second part, what is selling. You have to design another function with the volume that will accept two arguments, double h and double r. Now it will be pi r square h. So now let's implement that. You will get two arguments, that is h and r. So here what we'll say, double volume and double h double r. It is very simple. Whatever you have been asked in the question, you simply write it, the definition, and whatever they have told to calculate, like here it was v is equals to pi r square h. So you will say double answer, and in this answer you are going to do, suppose here v is given. So generally if it doesn't matter whether it's given v or something like that, doesn't matter, but for exam point of view, use the same variable convention, like it is given v. So you can either use v or you can use your own different variable, that doesn't matter. But for exam point of view, let's make it v itself. Okay, v, and then we return this v. All right, now we create another variable here v. This is scope, this has a scope inside this function, and then you will say v is equals to, again you have to use the value of pi. So you know you can use 22 by 7.0, or you can directly use math dot pi. So you will say math dot capital pi. You have to keep in mind these are both capital, pi, and then h square, sorry, r square and h. So you will say r square, you can do r into r into h, or either you can use here math.pow r comma 2. That is also correct. Now you will return this, return v. All right. So the second part is also done. Now check for the third part. You will return L, B, H, and simply you have to calculate L into B into H. Now in this case, you will get three arguments. So double volume, and here you get double L, double B, double H. And then what you have to do? You have to simply calculate the volume double V You can either do in the same line itself. So L into B into H. All right. Now you have to return this V. All right. So this is a closing of this function. Now this is a closing of the class. Got it? So if you have any doubt, do comment it down. And if not, you want to write the program, do pause the video, write the section of that particular section of that program. First, try it on your own. And if you're not able to do, if you are stuck, then come back and then check the code or verify the code. Okay. Now let's move forward. So this is very straightforward question, but I thought to make you understand, you should know this type of problem, how that argument is passed in the main. See, write a program that reads in the radius of a circle passed as a main argument. Main argument, whenever it says, like the argument will be passed to string args inside the main method, whatever you get, and output the area. So what it is telling, I'll make you clear. Look over here, like class, make it area, and inside that you write public static void main. It is telling the argument that we were passing to a function, like this main is also a function. Okay, this main is also a function. So how we were passing the argument to our user defined function, similarly argument has already been passed to this inbuilt function. So in inbuilt function we see, like we receive argument as string args. So this is an array. You'll read about array in your upcoming lectures, or if you have watched the video of the arrays, you might be clear. Like arrays, it works like, I'll give you an example, like multiple variables like you create. Similarly, like similar type of data you want to store, integer data type like 5, 4, 3, 2, and this array is pointing to, this is something like this, and every index is containing one integer variable. So this is index 0, this is index 1, index 2, index 3. Now suppose if I do a of 0, it will give me 5. If I do a of 1, it will give me 4. So this is what, if there is an array, just think of this is an integer array, and if you do a of 0, this will give 5, a of 4, this will give you 4, a of 1 will give you 4. So similarly, in the main method, we accept string argument. So you think of whatever you value get, these are the string value. Okay, some string value. Suppose in this program you get 5 argument, 4 argument, but here you have been told radius is passed as a main argument. That means in the 0th index, suppose the radius has been passed as 5. So this 5 is a string, and in this args, that is an array, in the index 0, it contains the radius that is being already passed to you. Okay, so you have to extract it from there. So you will say radius is passed. Okay, so you will say int r is equals to args of 0. I told you how we access. We access using the index. So you'll say what is the name of the array, or you can think of a simple variable, but with multiple values stored in it, that you can think for now. So you will say argument 0 contains the radius, what is already passed to this main method. So once you do this, since this is a string type and you want it as an integer type, so basically you have to do parse integer dot parse int. So before this you have to do integer dot parse int, and here you have to write args of 0. All right, now you have to calculate uh, the area of a circle. Okay, so you know pi r square, the area of the circle. So you will say double area is equals to math dot pi into r into r. All right. So math dot pi r into r. Now we'll do the output. It is as simple as it is. Okay, straightforward. Only you have to keep in mind, like main is also a method, so it also accepts the argument. So you were told like the argument is passed to the main method. So since it is a string type, so whenever you have to extract it, you will extract based on the position. So whenever you extract it based on the position from the array, that is the index 0, then what you have to do, you have to convert it to an integer type. Since this variable was a string, so you have to convert it into integer to apply some mathematics over here. Okay, so you have done math.pi into r, that is pi r square. You get the output in this variable double, and now just you have to print it. Print area. All right, this type of question will generally not come, but for your understanding point of view, like the argument can also be passed to main. That is why I have showed it over here. Next, this is one other, this was asked in 2011. So whatever problem I'm telling you are discussing over here, these are already having came in your board exams. So these are very important. Similarly, for your board exam also, same type of question will come, only the logic part will change, or the argument will change, or the name of the function will change. Okay, so here you see, design a class to overload a function compare. So here you see, you don't have to return anything. Since it is a void, it accepts two argument int. In this case, you have to compare the two integer and print the greater value. So whenever this function gets called, you have to check which one is greater, and the greater value you have to print it out. All right. Now in the same case, if this is a function, you will get two character, and you have to compare the character value. That is the ASCII value. You already know the ASCII values. Capital A starts with 65, small a starts from 97. So these are the ASCII values. So you have been told like compare the numeric value of these two character and print the greater value, which one is having a greater value. All right. And the third case, it is told like void compare, and you will get two string, and you have to print that string which is having a longer length. Okay, now let's write this class. Class overload. Suppose I give the name overload. Here, first one is a void compare, and it accepts two arguments. Void compare. Okay, int a comma int b. All right. So you have been told to print the greater one, to compare an integer value and print the greater value. So you have to compare which one is greater. So instead you can apply if else, if a greater than b, then print a, else b, like this you can do. Otherwise, directly you can write system dot out dot println. You can do math dot max, and if you pass a comma b, it will return the greater value. Okay, even though you can compare, you can write if else logic, and you have to print the greater one. So you are using the math function math, and you are passing this 2 as argument, and it will return the greater value, and that greater value will get printed. Now suppose it might be like print the smallest value out of these two, so you will do math.min, or you can write this logic, if a greater than b, then I will print a, else I'll print b. This also you can do, or directly you can do in one line. Okay, now first part is done. Second part is void compare char and char. you have to compare the numeric value. So in this case, you are getting two character. So you will say void compare then s. All right. These two are what? Character. We can typecast it to integer. So this will become an integer value. That is the ASCII value of this character. And here also int, that is the ASCII value of this character. So whosever ASCII value is greater, so we'll print. Suppose in this case, the ASCII value of C is greater. So we are going to print C. So we'll say system dot out dot println and we'll print C. Else system dot out dot println and we'll say s. All right. So this was the second part. And similarly, third part is you receive two string and you have to compare the length of these two string. So how you can do that? So similarly, what you will do, you will say void compare void compare, and in this you will pass or you will get two string s1 and string s2. And inside this, what is happening? Inside this, you have to compare the length. Whosever length is greater, you have to print that string. So what we can do? Generally for string, as we have not covered the chapter string, I will let you know with the string, there is one method that is called length. So in any string variable, you apply this method string.length, it will return you the length of the string. For example, if suppose this string s is equals to hello. All right. Now, if you do sopln of s dot length, so what will happen? So in this case, it will find the length 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this output will be 5. Similarly, now we know like with the string there is length function available. So what you will do? You will say if s1 dot length is greater, this is a function. Since this length is a function, so you have to call this. So if s1 dot length is greater than s2 dot length. So what you will say? If s1 is greater, then I will print s1. So I will say system dot out dot println and I will print s1. Else, what we need to do? Else you have to print s2. Else system dot out dot println s2. Clear? So this is the closing of this function and this is the closing of the class. So we have discussed a lot of program based on function overloading, based on function and the concept when we call a particular piece of functions as a function overloading. So these all we have covered in this video. If you have any doubt, do comment it. I'll try to explain in the comment itself, or if required, I'll create another video to clear your doubt. Thank you.